टेंशन में सोनिया गांधी, हाँ आई मोदी की आंधी, टेंशन में सोनिया गांधी छा गया भारत माँ का सिपाही नरेंद्र भाई, भारत माँ का सिपाही नरेंद्र भाई। मोदी को वोट देंगे, कांग्रेस को चोट देंगे, मोदी को वोट देंगे, कांग्रेस को चोट देंगे, जागे इंडिया, कांग्रेस की कर दे छुट्टी मारो मोदी भाई, कांग्रेस की कर दे छुट्टी मारो मोदी भाई, कांग्रेस की कर दे छुट्टी।
Welcome, guys, to a new episode of Bharatiya Janata Podcast. Unfortunately, today again, Aditya is not with us to do this episode. He had a last-minute citizenship interview. He's applying for citizenship of Kailasha, so he's kind of there giving the interview and stuff. So instead of Aditya, we have two guests today. We have Amit and Gautam. So before I start this week's episode, I just wanted to go over what we would want to cover in today's episode, which is basically, as we've been doing in the last few episodes, we will examine our situation, our privilege, lack of it, and also the current political news scenario in India. With that, I'd first reach out to Amit. Amit, would you mind giving us a brief background of you?
Hey, hi. So uh, I'm right now in Jersey and I'm working for an IT company. So I come from Bombay and my parents are from Kolhapur, from Maharashtra. So
Chappalwala.
yes, Chapalwala. That's the only thing everybody knows about it. But yeah, so Chapalwala, and then yeah, we have a really spicy food too from Kolhapur. So yeah,
That
I've been here for quite a while now, and we're trying to find our feet in the new country. But yeah, so if you want to talk about like our political identity or what exactly you want to
we
start
will
with?
we will go over that, but before that, I have to make a comment that it's not just Kolhapur, man. If you ask my mom, all of
Hmm.
Maharashtrian food is basically water and red chili powder.
I think I might take offense into that because if you go from Konkan to Pune to Maharashtra to somewhere in Vidarbha, it would be really different food. So yeah, I don't know who generalizes like that, but it's okay.
Yeah,
No
oh
offense to
yeah,
your mom.
everybody stereotypes everyone else. That's basically to your earlier question. So to
Yeah.
since so about we will talk about the political news that is happening around, but we will also talk about our own identities. In our last episode, we had someone who was a deconverted bhakt,
Mhm.
and that was interesting to talk about the mental process
No,
that
the
someone
thing
has
is,
to.
like, when you ask me, like,
Mhm.
Amit, can you talk about yourself? It's like, tell me about yourself. Oh, interview में question होता है ना, right? Like that.
Tell me about
I
yourself.
like
पहला
what?
वाला tell me about yourself is just basic tell me
Oh
about
yeah.
yourself.
What is your weakness? I work too hard.
I'm a workaholic. Sometimes I don't even
Hardcore.
realize it.
Too much attention to detail. I like, yeah, okay.
इसीलिए वो बहुत ही anyway it's such a BS question. Gautam, could you give us a brief background?
Yeah, so I was born and pretty much grew up in uh, Vijayawada, it's in Andhra Pradesh. I must say the great city of Vijayawada because I have somewhat of a bias to my city. But I grew up there. Most of my studies have been there, except for 2 years where I was in Agra for my fourth and fifth grades. Uh, Most of my education has been there. I did my bachelor's there, and then I moved to the United States in 2012. Just like Amit, I'm an IT guy as well. I work in the IT sector. As you said, we can talk about politics and our identities and all of that much later. But Yeah, that's just a brief introduction about me, and I know all of you guys through the News Laundry WhatsApp US group,
ये तो
which
ये
I'm so surprised how much active it is to this day. I mean, my phone still keeps buzzing.
तो ये जो अपन कर रहे हैं ये गरीबों का न्यूज़ लॉन्ड्री है और क्या है ये वही है.
और नहीं तो क्या? Actually, Abhi, I'm sure we'll have multiple messages on our WhatsApp group as we speak now.
हाँ, there is something or the other. Right now, they're talking about the General Bipin Rawat's comments and should a military man comment on politics? But nevertheless, that's an interesting group. That group has brought us all together and has provided us a lot of knowledge, if I can say that. So I have like one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to the two of you is so as Gautam mentioned, we know each other through that WhatsApp group, and the reason that I wanted to talk to you guys was because you guys belong from what people would say the Bahujan community, and I just wanted to kind of understand since we did a Bhakt deconversion of a Bhakt the last episode. I thought in this episode we will try to go deeper in the identity of one of the most crucial aspects of the Indian society, and that is caste. So let us start with Gautam. Gautam, I mean we've met and we've talked about this, but I'd like to go back and if you could talk us briefly through your first moments when you realize that there is something different about your identity, growing up maybe in school or maybe like in the playground or wherever. Was there a moment or was there like a gradual understanding of it?
So yeah, there was no sort of a breakthrough moment, if I can call it that as such, but it was kind of organic. So as I said, I was born in Vijayawada, and I kind of knew that I belonged to the SC community or the SC caste growing up because we had to fill out forms and give out certain stuff. And my dad was actually active uh, in his bank related unions and stuff like that. He was always like telling us here and there that we belong to this caste, and he kind of told us where we generally fall into. Not that he had any inferiority complex or anything, but he just wanted us to understand that we belong to the SC community, right? So I kind of knew that we belonged to a caste that was exactly not higher up in the social food chain, right? So as I was lucky enough, and I give my parents credit that they put me in a school which to this day I'm really proud of that I was in that school. Uh, we were we grew in that school together with students and friends. We made so many friends, but we grew up without knowing what each other's caste was until our 10th standard, right? So all of us were fortunate enough to have friends belonging to all religions, languages, and also different castes. So we had no inclination of what caste each of our friends belonged to. But then after that I moved because our school was only till 10th. We had to do a plus one and plus two in some other institutions. It was in our state we have what is called as the MSET boom or the competitive exam boom, right? So we were
Yeah,
put in
Andhra.
these yeah we were put in these jails. I'm sorry, education institutions. So Sri Chaitanya, Narayana, and stuff like that. So, but there, when we moved there, when I was still in my hometown, but I was like a day scholar. I used to go there to college every day, plus one, plus two. There, I could see all of these students coming from all of these other regions, all of other some of the other schools, and there I could kind of see that they were slowly kind of segregating themselves based on the caste. Uh, if you know anything, I belong to a district called Krishna district in which or in Andhra, which is the majority is the Kama caste community, right? So I could clearly see that the Kama, not everybody, there are obviously very few good exceptions, but I could see that they were kind of dividing themselves on caste lines. So that's kind of when I felt there is some segregation going on here. There's some inherent bias going on here that's based on caste. So that's when I kind of felt more aware of what my caste is, if I could say that.
Similar, same question to Amit. Growing up, when you think about it, is there a moment where you feel, or is there a moment that you can point to where you realize that you started understanding much more about your identity than like a common kid maybe?
Actually, to be frank, right, I have not really, it's like I've mentioned this in our group chats also. I've been kind of like protected from whatever discrimination others might have had before. And I am actually. The thing is, a kind of, now Gautam just mentioned, like, his parents were like telling him that we belong to certain kind of caste, which is different from others. For me, it was completely different. Means like I knew that I come from. We used to call ourselves Navbauddha or Mahar, but my mom and dad never actually mentioned what exactly that is. And it kind of like my mom used to do some kind of festivals which are from Hindu uh, religion, and so I never felt like something left out because all the things were happening which were happening in all the things that were happening in my home, which were happening in our neighbors also. I think in where I stay, there are only two families, me and one more family who come from SC, and
Mhm.
everybody else is from higher caste. But we all were doing the same thing, same festivals. Um, so my parents actually kind of protected me from being different from others. I never really understood till I think I remember in one of eighth or seventh standard. Like my school administrator, they asked me to come and they said like these are the free books for you. I like I already have
It's sad.
books. Yeah, so I like
Mhm.
no, so I didn't understand that, and um, at the end of the year I had to return them. So like I didn't use them because I already had them. But they won't give me any results sheet if I don't return them. So I didn't understand what exactly was that, but I knew that that is because I am from SC. But the only time, like first time I really, and we kind of that the way we grew, we knew that Ambedkar was a big part of our family. That one thing I knew from the start. And when I used to go in the lines after 10th standard, and somebody would talk like because of Ambedkar, we are in this so much trouble. These reserve people, they don't do anything. They just get admission. And that time I kind of got familiar with like, okay, there is something like this happening, and I tried understanding that. But that kind of I didn't get exposed so much. Luckily not in my neighborhood. Nobody really discriminated against me or said anything to me that will, you know, be offensive or something like that. So that kind of like discrimination, what somebody else might have to go through, I didn't go through, and it took me little while to understand how the whole caste dynamics actually happens.
So, if you don't mind me quickly asking, so Mahar is obviously the caste community that
Hmm.
Dr. Ambedkar also comes from. So,
Yes.
did you guys, Amit, this is more to you. Did your family identify more to like? Do you guys identify more to Hinduism or Buddhism?
No, we identified more to Buddhism. It's just that means like it's just funny that after almost passing my 30 last year, when my mom and dad came to US, we just had talk about all this caste dynamics, and they just told me that we didn't believe it, but we did it for you people, means like for kids, so that we don't feel left out, like
Like Diwali and all of that.
why we are not celebrating what others are celebrating, all those things. So
That's
it's kind of like a protective measure from
I
parents.
That's very
Yeah.
interesting. And in fact, both of you mentioned in your description something that I found interesting. So let me go back to Gautam first. So Gautam, mentioned in your description that your dad was involved in all of this, but he did not have any inferiority complex around it, right? So, and this is more of a question where I want you to reflect and maybe like answer me. But um, have you ever felt inferiority complex about it? Have you ever had a feeling of not wanting to talk about um, caste in a group setting or something? Like, has there been ever a feeling of a general, like, I don't know, embarrassment is not the right word, but you know how caste works in India. Has there ever been a feeling ki it's better if I just say quiet right now?
Uh, Not really, but as I could relate to what Ahmed just said with regards to how people talk about, even though they don't directly speak about it, but when they talk about these reservations and open categories and all of that stuff, when people used to talk to in a group setting, when they used to talk about, let's say, merit, reservations versus merit and all of that stuff, right? I really could not give them an accurate answer or like a specific answer as to why the reservations were important, because I did not, honestly, I did not have much research behind me. And also, I knew that reservations were important because historically speaking, India has had a really bad track record of discriminating against the lower castes. We beat scheduled castes or scheduled tribes. So I kind of had that answer, but it was not until later on when I actually read, if you remember, I don't know if you guys remember Abhinandan's piece on News Laundry about the merit versus quota argument, right? When he spoke about the fact that anybody has merit is a direct result of your privilege, where you're born, where how you what access you have to education and what you eat, what your nutrition is, and so on, right? So I could not give them that answer. The only answer that I could come up with was that historically speaking, we were always discriminated against. Uh, but to your point about if I actually felt if there was any situation when I felt uncomfortable speaking in a group setting, I don't think so. But then I was also uh, back in the day inadequate when I had to when I felt
Are
like I
you
had to
open?
speak up.
Have you been open about like caste? Like, if agar,
Oh yeah.
let's say, okay.
If anybody asked me, or if anybody, well, all of my friends that I have right now know what caste I belong to. If anybody asked me, I would say that I belong to the SC community. Yeah, definitely. And also to your point about religion, Amit said more towards if he was more leaning towards Buddhism or Hinduism, he said Buddhism, right? I lean towards neither. I'm a Christian. I identify
Yeah,
myself
yeah.
as a Christian, so there goes that.
So of course, I mean, the reason that I asked this question to Amit was uh, because and again, this is a very broad statement, and but like Buddhism, in the way it is still very close to Hinduism, and a lot of right
Yeah.
wing Hindus kind of try to bracket all of it together. So that is why I kind
Yeah, in
of
fact, as a matter of fact, I can actually relate to Amit when he says his family is kind of close to Buddhism because my name is Gautam, which I'm named after Buddha, clearly. So my grandfather gave us all of these names. I have a cousin whose name is Gautami. So
nice.
my grandfather, though he was an atheist, he was a huge admirer of the Buddha. Uh, it probably has to come. I'm definitely sure that it came from some of his readings of Ambedkar. So he used to have a big portrait of Ambedkar on the wall, a Buddha picture on the wall of like a portrait, and he was like an admirer of Buddha, though he was an atheist. But yeah,
So, one of the facts that and Amit, I had a question for you as well, but before I ask you the question, so one of the things that the three of us have to kind of agree on, I think, is the fact that simply because all of us can talk in English, live in the states, all we already have a certain amount of privilege that was probably provided in to some extent by our parents,
hundred
and,
percent,
and that is why sometimes I feel that if we talk about like the question of reservation, maybe uh, we are not we जिसे कहते हैं intersectionality comes in between, right? Because there is an intersection between class and caste, and even if you are on the negative when it comes to the caste aspect of it, there is a class aspect of it, and in that aspect potentially you're still on the positive, and that is why that intersection maybe uh, puts you at a obviously still negative in many aspects, but
That is, yeah, that is so true because I kind of grew up in a middle class family. My dad was a banker and my mom works for the LIC. So there was that too because I really could not exactly relate to the lower most common, like lower most denominator when it comes to the the SC community, because I was not I did not grow up like having nothing, or did not grow up like a poor student who couldn't pay off
exactly.
his school fees and stuff like that. So that was probably why I felt inadequate too.
Exactly, and that brings me to Amit. So, Amit, you said that your parents protected you
Yeah.
from a lot of it. Now, when we look at caste in India, um,
Mhm.
and this is a very important term that you use, protected, because a lot of the times protection means to mimic the traditions and the customs of the upper caste Hindu groups, so that because nobody can identify you by skin, like in US you can whites and blacks, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of the times by mimicking the customs and tradition of the upper caste community, you can almost protect not just your I mean your family, your kids, but did you ever, after when, I mean when you left your home and became your own person, did you ever feel that that protection that was provided you, it helped you in terms of how you dealt with the rest of a lot of upper caste people that you meet throughout your career and like a professional aspect, or did it make you feel more like assimilated in the in those customs and tradition, and that is why you were not uh, like properly the right torch bearer of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
specific
yeah. I
identity?
never claimed to be like torchbearer, like the you said, right? I
Mhm.
never claimed to be that because so if I have to tell you, like, even though we came in my neighborhood, me and my neighbors, everybody had a caste difference, but we all came from same financial background. So
Yeah.
whatever issues, financial issues I have, my family will have, similar will be there on my neighbors too. Or whatever aspirations we had, my neighbors also had the same aspiration. So in the kind of assimilation thing, we I was really comfortable around my neighborhood. The, there is a class thing that happens with everybody who comes from a lower middle class background to US with whatever ways they can do, like the way, like english speaking, it's been good after I came here, but it was really a downer when I switched from vernacular to English medium from like after 10th standard till my bachelor's. I was not able to talk or write or properly, and it affected me in results and everything, communication with everybody and everybody. That happened only when I came here and I learned little bit English. My confidence in everything increased with that respect. So when you do that kind of transition, it always an issue. But with respect to caste or anything, I feel like it never had. I never had any inferiority complex with that respect, or nobody actually made me feel bad about it, because everybody had same kind of issues when I was growing up around me. So that was never an issue.
Interesting. So I'll still stick with you, Amit. So,
Hmm.
growing up, especially during your college days and all, do
Hmm.
you, when you look back at it, do you identify yourself as a political person? Like, was there a politics? Was there some politics around you? Did you find politics, or was it something that happened much later? Because my assumption is that since we are in that WhatsApp group, all of us are
Hmm.
political in some nature. So I'm my question is, when did you find that politics of yours?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, means like Shiv Sena Shakha is just right around the corner for me. Like my building is like, we you cross the building, there is a Shiv Sena Shakha. Used to be. Now it's not there. So we always had presence of some Shiv Sena volunteers in my building. So we were always knew what Thackeray is talking about. We always read about those things. But for me, I knew my father doesn't support Shiv Sena. that I knew
Mhm.
he supports Congress, or I knew that he doesn't really like, you know, extreme Hinduism propaganda, that kind of stuff. I was always aware that this is happening in my house, and there are some friends outside in the building who think other way, and there is a difference of opinion. But that never came into anything. Came into any like it didn't create any problems. But with respect to my own political identity, it did not actually started from Indian politics.
Mhm.
It really started from American politics. Uh, it's like I started looking, basically, I think a lot of people have gone the same way, and became political activists through John Stewart.
Yeah.
Uh,
In
so
America, definitely.
in America, definitely. So means like there was a point when I decided I will stay back in US, and then I decided to take little more interest in what's happening there. And John Stewart is a perfect segue for anybody who wants to take interest. So I started looking into then I started looking what kind of shit happens here. I can say shit, right? In India.
Yeah, yeah. You can say shit, fuck, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So
हमका बोला था नहीं कभी कुछ.
so yeah, it's like started watching that, and then I watched a there is an independent YouTube channel called Young Turks. I'm not sure if you guys are aware.
Same
Oh, I
here,
know
bro.
that.
Young Turk is like the biggest online news channel right now
He's
in
running for
America.
Yeah,
Congress now.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
guy.
he's running for Congress now.
yeah.
Thank you, there. So I started looking that. Then I started looking Kyle Kulinski and all this. So lot of American independent news channels I started looking into, and slowly I switched over a little bit. I started taking interest in Indian politics as I found News Laundry, one of the man
Which
of
year is this, if you don't mind me
it's
asking?
around like 2012, 2013 only. It was that famous interview of Abhinandan where Subramaniam Swamy called him Naxal.
You have appeared.
That was my first exposure of first exposure about News Laundry, and actually News Laundry has kind of like it has like a lot of influence on me in a sense that it made me interested in Indian politics. Otherwise, I wasn't sure where I should look for any good news about Indian politics. So
I
yeah,
have
So,
a question. Sorry, Raj.
sure,
Sorry,
sure.
go
No,
ahead.
please.
yeah.
अरे नहीं,
I have a
everybody.
question with regards to with what Amit said, that he was like exposed to politics, or he formed an opinion on politics after he came to the US. Is it because, Amit, here there is like a clear divide because it's just two party system here? There's a clear divide on what is left of center and what's right of center, Republican, Democrat. Because do you find that easier to comprehend? Because India, it's all complex and
Yeah,
diverse, and we have so many parties, right?
there
Before
is
you answer, before
yeah,
you
okay.
answer, I have an additional question to you related to this. Why did you identify more? I mean, John Stewart. This is my assumption. Why did you identify more with the Democratic Party and not the Republicans? Now answer both
Uh,
questions.
okay. So first, it's not about what if they have a clear sides, everything. So it's basically because I started watching through John Stewart. It's basically it becomes easier when you're looking through comedy. You get entertained as well as you get educated. That
Yeah.
way, I kind of understood. And one more thing is like there was kind of buzz when I just came in 2008. There was kind of buzz
Obama.
about Barack Obama, like first African American, and I was
Right.
just such a stupid person that time. Like I was like, wasn't Martin Luther King president before? And then I like no. Then I like no. Okay, so so there was a kind of curiosity, and then I followed Mitt Romney, Barack Obama election little bit more than I would have done anything else. So there was that, and there is a kind of like more transparency in US politics in a sense that uh, you cannot imagine a kind of like primary debates that happened between the party in India. It's like you cannot
Yeah.
have. I cannot understand like Advani and Modi and Shah all sit together and talk like ये मेरा policy है तुम्हारा policy तुम क्या करोगे ये क्या करोगे what is this what is going on, all these things are not going to happen. So that becomes like little bit more like I'm in awe with of that all that system. So it makes me more curious, and slowly as I looked into more, I just kind of understood more nuance into it. I'm kind of hating Democratic Party also now. It's like I've I think mentioned in our group like there is a book called Listen Liberal by Thomas Frank.
Yeah, you have, yes.
Yeah, so if you read that book, right, you will come to know that after FDR, Roosevelt,
Mhm.
Democratic Party is as much guilty of screwing up US people as Republican parties. So means like you, you have to see, really go through that book to understand how bad that is. But yeah, it basically, as I got more interested, I started digging into it more. So now I have like a clear thing what I really uh, prefer, or what kind of
Mhm.
policies attract me in US politics at least.
What about Indian politics? Just
Indian politics, I feel like, I'm still not exposed myself so much to that. I'm still trying to understand how the political dimensions work, because in India it's not like clear policy driven politics. There are a lot of trade off politics, caste politics, identity
yeah.
politics. There are so many facets which I right now don't understand, or right now I'm starting to understand, but I'm not expert enough, or I'm not exposed enough to talk about it more confidently. So I try to refrain myself before I start talking about it.
I think the benefit, as you mentioned about the American politics, about like presidential debates and primaries, it's definitely there. I think one benefit that Indian style politics offers, and before I say that, Indian democracy needs a lot of help. There, we cannot even compare it to American democracy. But I think one benefit that it offers is because of so many parties, and I know because of so many parties, there are times when there is no clear cut mandate that is provided, but
Mm.
like for example in US today, if you are a socially liberal person but who wants to be economically more center, there's no one really who represents you in US, and that's something that you will you see what I'm saying, right? But
Yeah.
when it comes to the Indian context, there are so many different parties that you will in effect find someone who will represent you more compared to what happens in America. But anyway, going to Gotham, same question. How did you identify your politics? When did you identify your politics? Also, being a religious minority along with the caste being added into it, how did that also come into your politics when it comes to India? And then you can talk about how you see American politics also. But yeah, go on.
Sure. So my family has always been a congressee, which means they've always voted for the Congress. I think by default, because the main rival to the Congress party was the BJP. So we were our families, right from my grandparents to my parents, they've always by default voted for the Congress. I'm sure my dad had he had I'm using it in the past tense because my dad passed 15 years ago. So he was political in his, he kind of thought about politics and stuff like that too. So he was always a congressee by default, I think, because he had no major choice, even in Andhra, because the other choice was the Telugu Desam party, which
Which was
were
BJP.
more, which was always aligned to the BJP anyway. Um, so I kind of grew up in that environment. But then personally, I think I started just following politics and kind of forming opinions, um, kind of in the late 2000s, when the whole English news channels boom happened. Right, that's when NT was getting big. IBN
Yeah.
was launched. Times Now was, I think, slowly or it came around 2010, 2011, I think. So that's when I started following all these news channels. We always got the Hindu, like every other South Indian
Yeah.
household. We always had the Hindu in our house. So I read a lot of newspaper. I read a lot of. I watched a lot of news. So that's kind of how I kind of slowly started forming opinions, and also politics by itself kind of fascinated me a lot. I was very very interested in how people jostle for positions in the government and how alliances are formed and how post-election alliances happen and all the machinations that come with it. So I kind of really used to enjoyed like the
The
political
game.
games as they call it. Yeah, as such. So I was definitely attracted to that. And then obviously once the elections happened in 2009, that was, as I said, that was like the boom of the English news channels for me too. So I started following all of these news channels, and that's how I kind of formed my own political opinions. Also, for the record, I don't identify myself as a left of center or right of center guy, because I think we are in an age where it's all issue based. You take an issue, get down to the specifics, and then kind of analyze where you stand. Is where I stand, because I don't know if you guys heard the Revisionist History podcast by Malcolm Gladwell, where
Yeah,
he talks about where he talks about uh, what I forget what subset of people he talks about, where they get into specifics. So yeah. So anyway, that was kind of a brief background of how I kind of had formed my opinions on politics.
so to both of you actually, especially ever since Narendra Modi took over, we see this kind of reassertion, if you will, of Dalit identity, um, be it in popular media, political discourse, even cinema. So for example, Amit, I don't know how much Maharashtrian films you follow, but like Nagraj Manjule has made some movies. Fandry, for example, was phenomenal for me.
Hmm.
But have you followed this? How do you see this? And has this kind of reassertion that has happened, whether it be Chandrasekhar Ravan or even the whole store, the case, the Rohit Vemula thing, um, like how do you? What's your take on it, basically?
I think I haven't followed Chandrasekhar Azad so much because it's really I don't follow news so much. But with respect to all these different like Twitter handles like Dalit Camera, or
Hmm.
it's not
Yeah,
like it wouldn't have happened if Modi was didn't come in power. I think it would have happened because we suddenly had ways to assert ourselves. Means
that's
like
true.
you are not dependent on a mainstream channel to cover you. Now you can make your own YouTube videos, or you can make create your own Twitter handle and talk what you want to talk. So that those kind of allocations, like you are not dependent on anybody else or any other messiah kind of a figure to assert yourself. So that would have happened anyways. So I really don't feel Modi has anything to do with it. With respect to at least how Dalits are asserting themselves right now, so I really don't see Modi has an influence. Only thing is like there might be a uh, like kind of feeling of like um, I at least felt that Modi coming to power is kind of like assertion of upper caste people showing their strength in some ways.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so that kind of like ruffles some feathers in like scheduled caste and other tribes, which I feel is a thing, and that's why they have become more vocal than they would have. But uh, because they have so many more tools to use to show their opinion and show what they want to and say what they want to say, I think that would have happened anyways.
Just a side take. Have you seen Fandry, by the way? Just curious.
Me, yes, yes, I think Sairat got way too much credit. Finder is like much better movie.
I
I
think Fandry is better. I think the court is better. I think better than Sarat. is what I mean. There's one specific scene in Fandry that has stuck with me ever since, and that is, so this family is essentially the pig chasers, basically.
Hmm.
And Gautam, I don't know if you've seen the movie,
No, I have
but
not. So go ahead. Yeah.
I recommend it very, very, very highly. It's a Marathi movie.
Sure.
So they are pig chasers, and there is this rope pig that the zamindar of the village asks this family to chase today, and because the father has some troubles in his knees, he asks his whole family, including his son, to help him capture the pig, basically. So the scene is basically they are running through the village, the whole family from different sides, trying to get hold of the pig. And suddenly they cross the school, the village school, and the school is about to start. And the son, they show the son running behind the pig, and suddenly in the school the national anthem starts and everybody has to stand. And the scene is basically everybody, even these, like the son, because he goes to the school but he's not going to the school today, the son, the father, the mother, the sister, everybody's standing because the national anthem is happening and the pig is running through them. It just kills you, that scene. That's just for me it was like a phenomenal description of how caste identity works in India. Anyway, so I guess the question that I have for you is exactly what I asked Amit. So ever since 2014, we see, at least for someone like me who probably did not see, there's a privilege of not seeing caste also. It's also a privilege, but someone who did not notice it much has seen it come over and over again in discussions in mainstream politics, in arts. There are literatures being written around it. There are people like Suraj Yangde, Yashika Dutt coming out, writing books on it. Then specifically what happened in 2016, the whole Rohit Vemula thing. Um, so just your take on all of these things.
So yeah, I think I agree with most of what Amit said. I think this would have happened either with or without Narendra Modi coming to power. Just because this is, I see this as a product of our times, right? So we are living in an era where everybody, this is the era of identity. So it's either Hindu national pride. So if you take the case of the US, it's all the rural middle class folk, showing their pride and voting for Trump. You can see that across Europe. You can see that in Brazil and so on. So I think that definitely plays into this. So everybody's kind of proud to identify themselves as someone. And historically speaking, in India, all this the SC community, even though they've been kind of discriminated against and so on, they've always kind of, I think, rallied together fairly well as a group. I think this kind of movement kind of accentuated that. And also, we're also living in the age of where everybody has access to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So that definitely plays into it. Then the whole when so and there's always these trigger points too, as you said, when the whole Rohit Vemula thing happened, and it was clearly a product of what happened with him was because of his caste, right? So and then that coupled by the times we live in and the exposure we have and how easy it is to reach people across the world kind of made it inevitable for all of these people to kind of rise up, be it in writing, be it in the form of movies, as you just described, or books, or articles, or videos, and all of this stuff. So yeah, I kind of agree with Amit, and also I think it's also a product of our times that we live in.
But which I fundamentally agree with both of you. There is one thing that is special about India. Across across the world, there is almost like a religious or a class struggle. But in India, it's religion, class, caste, and even within caste, it's not like even if, for example, UP is a great example. Mayawati is a big Dalit leader, but it's not like all Dalits of UP are getting behind her, because if Jatavs vote for her, Pasis will not vote for her. Like even
Right.
within different communities, there are like cleavages. I think the only community currently in India that is completely unified behind a leader and votes despite of them there being differences is the upper caste, because I think they are the biggest caste vote bank in India. But
You're
and there,
right. Because sorry to cut you in there, Raj.
no, 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 sure, go
Uh,
on.
because I kind of had this in my mind to kind of note this point out, because there's this very interesting subculture within a given caste too, right? As you just pointed out. Because
Yeah.
even for us, I belong to what is called, even though I'm an SC, I belong to what is called the Mala community, right? That's the
Hmm.
subcaste. But in Andhra, or where I come from, we have two major subcastes under SC, which is the Mala community and the Madiga community, right? So there's Mala and Madiga. So people usually, even though they were the same caste, people often used to sometimes ask and ask if we were two or three, which means if it's two means two syllables, Mala. If it's three, it means Madiga.
Oh
So it's a
wow,
very, very, very
My
interesting.
God.
interesting subculture within the SC community as well. So I've seen people having all of these arranging marriages, right? So they only look at people belonging to that particular subcaste,
Yeah, I
even
know.
though he can be. Yeah, go ahead, Amit. You probably see that. You probably see that too a lot of times.
No, it's like one of my relative only. Uh, she married somebody like she's Mahar and she married somebody from Bangi. Both are scheduled caste. But I
Hmm.
have seen discussions about how can that happen.
Yeah,
So
because Mahars are supposed to be like within that community. You like Mahar is supposed to be the warrior community, right?
probably I don't know. The thing is like I as I said right, I was protected, so I have very little exposure of the history of Mahas. I can tell you
Yeah.
about what's going on right now, but history of Mahas is something I don't know much about. But yeah, there are like the Bhima Koregaon thing happened. Yeah, that there is a
Exactly. That's
history
what I'm saying.
about Mahas,
Mahars, yeah.
obviously. But the thing is like for me, right? It's basically now if you see right, like how Israel, we kind of think like how Israel is treating Palestinians when they
Hmm.
themselves went through a horror of
Exactly.
Holocaust. So that
Yep.
way, for me, it is like that. Like it's okay. You 60, 70 years ago, you kind of rebelled because you were discriminated against. So it's okay if you don't do that practice now yourself. It's good. But yeah, that's what I kind of like feel like, because I was haven't gone through any kind of experience. My point of view is kind of like outsider point of view that happens to me sometimes.
So when someone and I guess again this question is to the both of you, but when someone when an Indian leaves India
Mm.
and move abroad, they still take caste with them, or at least that is what I have noticed. Especially like I don't know if you guys have followed the California textbook whole fiasco, where basically the schools in California, the history textbook are teaching about all religions, and as part of the Hindu religion, they teach or they try to teach caste system. But a lot of Hindu groups in California went up to the California state court to file a case that there is no caste in Hinduism, so caste should not be taught as part of Hinduism in the textbooks. And so, which I found very interesting, because I mean, all of us know that there is, but so moving here, moving to the states and living in the states, has there ever been any experience? First, Gautam, to you, any experience where your caste identity, or where you were made aware of your caste identity, not maybe not even in a negative sense, but just made aware of it?
Luckily, unfortunately, no, because I've made friends in the US from all over India when I got here in my masters, and then also after that, I've made a lot of friends. Most of my friends right now are Americans, so that really did not play a factor much of a factor. But I did hear a lot of I know from my friends and associate their association with other friends. who tell me that there is definitely this the caste there's definitely a caste based segregation for some of the people. I think I spoke about this to you briefly when we met, Raj,
Yeah,
about how these all of these Telugu associations in America, right?
Tana and
They're
Nata.
kind Yeah, so they're apparently divided on caste lines now,
Yeah.
which to me is mind boggling because I can understand that if it happens in India, but then we are so many here too. I guess that's par for the course.
So just to give, and I've talked about this before, but I guess, I mean, I've told this to Gautam also, but Amit, I think you'll find this interesting. So in San Francisco Bay,
Hmm.
there are about 200 different cricket clubs. So there is a like a cricket league that happens, and there is a cricket club that is made out of only Reddy players, and there is a cricket club that is made out of only Kamma players. And during one of their games, the thing got so heated that they literally had to call police to
Oh
intervene.
my God. Yeah.
So this is San Francisco tech people, but again, San Francisco is a big hub of HSS as well. Most
What's HSS? I'm
Indian
sorry.
HSS is the international wing of RSS,
Oh,
Hindu
okay,
Swayam
okay,
Sevak
okay, okay,
Sangh.
okay. Yeah, I
That's
got it.
HSS, and many techies here fund HSS. Go to HSS. There is HSS Shaka that happens in San Jose State University campus.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, no, the
I
thing,
mean,
like, one thing that benefited me that very few Marathi guys,
mhm,
when I came here to do masters, most of us, it's New Jersey. So most of the people in my class were Gujaratis. They don't know anything
mhm,
about how, like, if a Marathi guy knows that my name is Kamble, he will know I'm from
mhm,
scheduled caste, but a Gujarati person won't know. Or so that way nobody really knew my caste. So I don't
mhm.
think they had any reaction to me or knowing my name. And once I ended up in job in IT, it's again mostly Telugu and Tamil crowd which is around me. So,
Represent.
so again, they don't know much about mine. Like if between Telugus, I know my friend who is a Telugu, and he just puts Kumar in his middle name because his father has told him that if you put your actual name there, they will know your caste. So he just puts Kumar there. So I know that, but they don't know about anything Marathi names, so they don't really care about you unless you explicitly start talking about caste. Nobody cares. So that way, discrimination-wise, I haven't really faced any
do
in
you,
India, US also.
for both of you, in your workplace, are there a lot of Indians that you guys work with?
It's IT.
Yeah. So, do you guys never discuss Indian politics? Like, because most desis, at least that is what I have felt, that inevitably end up talking about how good Modi ji is for India. And if you kind of offer any narrative that is opposite to it, then a lot of different layers of conversations open up.
I
So,
work in so I maybe Amit can speak to this much more because whenever I work with a lot of people that are in blue collar jobs. So I don't really come across. I don't most of the time I don't work in an office setting.
Mhm.
mhm.
So most of my colleagues are more or less temporary in nature because I travel for work and whatnot. So if Amit, you might have if you
Yeah,
work in like an office setting, you might have more interaction with this.
yeah, yeah. No, so the what happens is because you have most of the public which I work with is from South India, and most of them don't care about Modi so much. If you start
Yeah, that's
talking
true.
to them about South Indian politics, yeah, then the clause will come out. But otherwise, they're pretty much everybody is mostly Modi hater, so I am in a good company around.
There's only one South Indian group that I have met which wants to talk about Modi, and actually two. One is the Tambrams, and the other are the Mangalore Kannadigas.
Hmm.
But again, that's a very specific subset, and it's not necessary that
Yeah,
Yeah.
you meet them. So, with that, this section we've talked about. Let us go to the other thing that we wanted to talk about. So which is basically the CA and the NRC, because I think that is the only thing that is happening in India that we need to talk about right now. So let's start with Gautam, maybe. Your quick take on CA, NRC, and why or why not you support it.
Yeah, first let me shout out our one of our friends from the WhatsApp group, Sayani, I believe, who
Yeah.
shared some good articles on
I think it was
and some
Yeah.
Swati.
explainer series and stuff. Was it Swati? So shout out to Swati as well. Then sorry,
Okay.
sorry, Swati. uh, I mean, it is very obvious to me that they've kind of brought about this act, keeping in mind their the vision of the party and RSS, and also the and also looking ahead for the 2021 elections in coming up in Bengal and also some of the northeastern states too, I believe. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then-
So I mean, it's very obvious by just how they brought about the bill and how they converted it to an act and how no real discussion happened. I know Amit Shah spoke a bunch of lies in the parliament, and that was about all. It was what, a 1 day of discussion in both the houses, maybe 2 days, and an act of such magnitude was kind of pushed through and made it and got it approved from the president in within no time. It is very clear and obvious to me that this is an act that kind of uh, was made or was designed to kind of exclude or alienate Muslims as if they are not alienated enough already. Uh, they just because they clearly mentioned all of the religions except for Muslims. They've clearly mentioned all of the countries except, so they mentioned Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, right? Those are the three
yeah.
countries in question here, correct? By
Yeah.
and very conveniently kind of excluded Myanmar, for example. They also excluded the Sri Lankan Tamils too, but they clearly excluded Rohingya Muslims. And Amit Shah, I think, on the floor of the House said clearly that no Rohingya Muslim will be allowed to come to India, whereas everybody else who was persecuted based on religious lines is free to come to India and can be a citizen within no time, except for Muslims. So it is very clear to me that there's an inherent bias stemming from the whole RSS and slash BJP's vision of Hindu India, if that ever
So
becomes a reality.
Myanmar Rohingya Muslims I understand because you like BJP dislikes Muslims, but Sri Lankan Tamils ने क्या किया मेरे को तो अभी तक समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि why have they been excluded from this? I think the reason
I
that
think
they
there's
had
no incentive, right? What incentive do they have? Let's say
no
they
I
get, yeah, go
there's
ahead.
also there was also this thing right. Recently there were a number of bomb blasts that happened in Sri Lanka, and especially in northern Sri Lanka, you could very well classify Sri Lankan Muslims as a persecuted minority as well in Sri Lanka, especially
Correct.
after the recent events. So the moment you include Sri Lanka in the list is the moment that you by second degree you involve Muslims, and that is why they like even Sri Lanka. Like so, when it comes to basically, this is my take on it. When it comes to between protecting Hindus and making sure that something happens to Muslims, Hindus also take a backseat because the only reason that Sri Lankan Tamils I think are not included is because the moment they include religious minority or a
Yeah.
persecuted minority, Sri Lanka may Muslims also come into account. But
Yeah, and
Amit,
also, sorry, also coupled with the fact that in Assam now, let's say they've took away what, 19 lakh people from the
20,
NRC,
yeah,
right? The latest NRC, about 20 lakh people, and then so some of the people who are excluded, if they're Hindu, they can still go through the CAA route and get citizenship, but then Muslims can't do the same, right?
yeah. So
Because they'll be excluded anyway.
I mean, CA cannot be talked uh, as an independent entity without NRC or
Yeah.
NPR as they state. Amit,
Kapil Sibal
your take.
actually brought about. Sorry to cut you
Mhm.
off there again. It's my bad.
अरे
uh,
नहीं नहीं बिंदास.
Kapil Sibal, I mean, I very rarely see him making good statements, but he said essentially people who are excluded from the NRC, now if they go through the CA route, it means essentially that they are lying, right? Because if they're now saying that we are migrants from Bangladesh or Pakistan or whatever. But before, when it comes to NRC, they were saying that we are citizens. So essentially, he said those who are applying for CAA after they got excluded from NRC are essentially lying. Kind of an interesting point.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. So Ankit, Amit.
no. Um, First of all, right, the basic premise about this whole argument is kind of like we are the only place where Hindus can come, which
Hmm.
I, if you think we are not basically, we don't have Hinduism as a state
State religion.
religion. There is a neighboring country which has it. So ideally, Nepal should be the place where all Hindus should go. So
Yeah. बहुत ऊंचा पहाड़ है
That's
चढ़ने
right.
के लिए.
yeah, so to keep just uh, I don't really, it's like I kind of knew that something like this will happen, um, but I kind of got surprised when I came to know that like this bill was already there in 2016. I think it was there, and it was
Yeah.
so for me it was more like I got really angry that we didn't come to know about it, whether it's media's fault or anything else, because something like this, it if we could have known before, some kind of like the kind of resistance we are getting right now would have happened a little earlier. That's what I feel. And whatever it is, it's the whatever is happening, it's the vision of BJP. We really actually shouldn't be surprised that this is happening. So that's why it just now that BJP has a stronger position, they are going to push it. And I don't know, I don't see anything that is going to stop them for now. Because
Yeah,
Except
just the fact that. Yeah, go ahead, Amit.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
uh, means like the way they behave, they just crack down on Jamia Millia students or anywhere else. There is no fear. There is nothing to be feared about. They know that they kind of have a thing that we have a proper base now, which is not going to go away even if we do certain kind of things. And they have mastered the tools of keeping people engaged in something else, so that even if there is no development or there are no jobs, their base is going to vote for them. That's what I feel like. They are pretty sure about it, and
yeah,
now they are
this
pretty
is a
brazen
great
about that.
point. So
Yeah,
just to cut you guys a bit, and just, I mean, a related question that I guess I ask everybody whoever comes here. You just said, Amit, that no matter what happens to the economy, or do you, and let's start with you, Amit. Do you feel that there is a point where economy could potentially be so bad that the people who support BJP go against it, or do you think there is no line? There is no line that we can draw.
Then, see, there is always a possibility when the majority class starts getting hampered badly, then it will be a problem.
But define badly, na? What do
In a
you,
sense,
what is
like,
your badly?
so, okay, let me put it this way. So, when in US politics, when Trump was doing so many bad things, there was an emolument thing and this and that, everything, nothing happened. But when he started pushing into Hunter Biden, which is one of the elite guy, uh,
Yeah.
then a Democratic Party acted against him. So same way, when there will be a push against the means like there will be, so there is a saturation point where um, any democracy or any population of a country will get tired of you when so that will happen only when, like, let's say, people, rich people are getting rich, and but at the end of it, they in a sense, like, the common folk don't have any ability to get anything their way. I don't think we are in that position right now. And it's like, let's say a common person doesn't have proper money to do their needs properly, and now it is
Mhm.
starting to hurt businesses of that country. We are not
Which
in
is
a
a
position.
which is an interesting point that you bring because if you apply the same thing to NRC, the reason that there was not a lot of hue and cry during from 2016 was because Assam did not happen. Assam happened last year, and upper basically it you realize that currently the 20 lakh people who are in detention center, out of those 20 lakh people, there are 11 lakh Hindus. And then the people realized, and I know that like we support the protest and everything, and I do, but you cannot deny the fact that in Assam it hurt the Hindus more because they were carefree. They thought कि हमें कौन क्या करेगा, and they did not have papers. In fact, Muslims were more careful about having all the papers and everything. And I think when the larger media and organizations saw that this will impact across the board, especially after what they saw happen in Assam, they were like, "Nahi, this cannot be allowed to happen," and that is why we see such a flurry of protests. But Gautam, do you think that like there is any economic line where economy इतनी खराब हो जाए कि people will be like नहीं अब बीजेपी वोट नहीं कर सकते?
There will be a point at if this if our current economic slowdown continues to happen, there will probably a point somewhere in the future. But I don't think we are at that point yet. And also, we have to remember the main vote bank of the BJP is what the upper caste Hindus, right? Which means they are more or less upper middle class to rich people, right? Is probably much of a generalization there, but majority of them I feel like are
But
middle
at least
class, upper middle
they
class.
set the agenda, they set the narrative basically.
Right. So they'll be one of the last groups of people who will be affected by the economic slowdown. Right. They'll probably see the brunt of this right at the very end after all of the lower income people, lower caste people get affected, and then it probably works its way up then. So I think we are not at that point yet. I think once businesses start making losses, or once in big industries start to close, or something like that, something drastic happens. Until then, अरे मोदी जी सब ठीक करेंगे और क्या और कोई अच्छा रहा नहीं है. What they'll say? What other option is there anyway?
That
So just to go on, Amit, sorry.
No, sorry, that was such a valid point, that what other option is there anyway. That's kind of the most frustrating part when I think about Indian politics, is there is no opposition voice.
The
Like,
quality of the
quality of
opposition.
the
Yeah.
opposition is not at all good. It's like how much a media person like somebody like Ravish Kumar or Saurabh Dwivedi or anybody would do, how much they can do, nothing. A proper political party or a political face which is a good opposition has to be there, which we are clearly lacking, and there is nobody, literally nobody I can at least see who can become that face.
I agree with you. I agree with you. However, there is a slight disagreement I have is that the PR machinery of BJP is so strong that they can make a lot of the people who don't deserve to be heroes. Like, I mean, come on, look at Modi every time that he has spoken out of script in the last 3-4 years, right? Cloudy है benefit ले सकते
Hmm.
हैं या
Yeah.
वो गर्मी ग्लोबल वार्मिंग नहीं हुई है, हमें ठंड ज्यादा लग लाइक व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट ही सेज द सेम थिंग्स had they been said by someone else, we like the WhatsApp machinery and the PR machinery would have classified them as dumps. But and that is what makes me feel that no matter who comes, there will be some way that they can, maybe perhaps someone like Raghuram Rajan, if he comes and becomes an opposition leader, then maybe I don't see how they will spin that. But apart
But
from
then
that,
you won't have the charisma of Narendra Modi and Raghuram Rajan. That's the other thing. So it has to be a perfect storm of having a
that
leader
is
or a
why
party with great organizational and PR abilities combined with intellect.
which is so I recently tweeted this out that basically these are the same people who say कि मोरनी मोर के आंसू पीती है या क्लाउडी है बेनिफिट ले सकते हैं या त्रिपुरा सीएम saying that mechanical engineers should not apply for civil services. You guys remember all
Yeah.
these, right?
Yeah.
And now they are saying कि सीए अच्छे से पढ़ने के बाद comment करो. These same guys they are telling you पहले सीए पढ़ो फिर comment करो. I'm like,
Hmm.
come on.
Yeah.
So recently, Arvind Subramaniam, who was one of the chief economic advisors of Narendra Modi first term, gave an interview to Pranay Roy on NDTV, and he said that actually our GDP, which is currently at 4.5%, has been overestimated by at least 2.5 percentage points. Um,
Hmm.
so so what and he basically said that this economic slowdown is not an ordinary economic slowdown. This is like a proper out of average economic slowdown.
And also,
So
didn't the way they calculate the GDP also change recently?
they first so basically what happened is that when BJP took over in 2014, for to calculate GDP you need a base year, right? So they picked a base year which was 2012, which was a year of normal lower than normal GDP levels, and they completely removed the last base year, and they mandated 2012 to be the base year because they thought that that will so let's say India was growing at 7% on average. If you update the base year to 2010, that same 7% would start looking like 8.5%, and then you can tell people that during
Right.
UPA you were at 7%, and now we are growing at
It's
8.5%.
like
But then,
percentile.
what happened is demonetization happened, and then basically we started losing on percentage points, and now we are at 4.5, which is on in truth maybe 2%, which
अरे
is
चलो
like
एटलीस्ट
90.
काला धन तो पूरा साफ हो गया.
काला धन तो पूरा आ गया है बॉस.
Yeah.
काला धन is in.
No,
Anyway, we digressed a lot.
no, the thing is
I
like to come back to right. See, intellectuals don't make good politicians because they try to talk and they try to reason with you in the sense that I feel like
nuanced.
yeah, they try to get into nuance. So if we remember right, like Modi will talk in like अरे ये ऐसे ऐसे करूंगा तो 15 लाख किसके घर पे आ जाएगा. So that's like such a simple language what people understand. It may not be true, but it's goes into people's head. So unless somebody comes who can counter people, like the way there was, I don't know who was that Congress person who actually ripped into Sambit Patra recently. But like,
Gaurav Vallabh.
yeah, Gaurav Vallabh. He like, yeah,
Yeah.
आप थोड़ा बताओ ट्रिलियन में कितना होता है. That's like a simple question, and he didn't have an answer. But that simple question became viral. Instead of, yeah, how are
Yeah.
we going to achieve 5 trillion economy? उसके बारे में अगर if you start discussing, nobody's going to give attention to that. So you need somebody who can talk simple but effectively, which I don't see apart from Modi, anybody is right now in any other party.
What did you guys think of Kejriwal's remarks recently about the whole CA thing? Where kind of walked the fence there.
He his basically Kejriwal का जो constituency, if you will, is
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
ripe for BJP. It's there for picking, and the only reason today that Kejriwal still has some chance, and that is what, Amit, to your last point, the only reason today that Kejriwal has some chance in Delhi is because he has worked really hard in Delhi, and on top of it, his opponent is Manoj Tiwari, Rinki Aage Papa,
Hmm.
and that these two things coupled together are kind of giving him an edge. And even after that, I feel that this will be a very close election, and I still feel that unless, I mean, if you ask me, I think BJP will win Delhi. But
No,
anyway,
but I think
that's a whole different podcast.
one good thing AAP has in Delhi is good volunteer strength in Delhi, which always makes a difference. I don't think that happens in other states when they try. I think they have a really good base with respect to volunteers and
Definitely.
ground game in Delhi at least. So that should help them in this coming election.
I hope it helps them, but I still think that I mean BJP always has RSS. आरएसएस का वो लाइक ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल स्ट्रेंथ, आरएसएस के ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल स्ट्रेंथ के सामने इंडिया में कुछ नहीं है बेसिकली. बट
Man, RSS,
एनीवे,
right? They have this RSS rally video. I think some RSS stuff.
हैदराबाद.
Yeah, Telangana.
Oh yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
so somebody, some American independent journalist I follow, Ben Norton, he was like a horrifying video of RSS, the militia army of BJP. I like, who the fucking talks about RSS like this? They are not. And it's like, yeah, it looks big, but I don't think they are anywhere near weaponized militia or something like that. It kind of like exaggerated when it comes to
They
US
have
people
lathis.
looking at RSS and BJP.
They have lathis. So here's the thing. The thing is not about
Yeah.
RSS. The thing is that if you look at UP, right? If BJP wants to do something, they have institutions with them. The police is with them. So basically, like what happened during Gujarat riots, right? Bajrang Dal by itself, I don't know how much atrocity they can commit. But the moment police बोलती कि नहीं अभी 1 घंटे के लिए कुछ नहीं करते हैं, then you get a free hand, then you can like aspire to do a lot. That is the thing. But again, RSS is a whole different beast. I have something else to recommend today, but there is this documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's called The World Before Her.
No, I
um,
No.
haven't.
I highly recommend both of you to watch it. It's basically, it's a very good take on both. um, Basically, the documentary mein, there are two females that are being followed. One female is planning to participate in Femina Miss India, and the other female is attending a Durga Vahini camp. And both, like, obviously Durga Vahini camp has a lot of regressive ideas, but you'll see how basically the females are being failed in both, in the sense कि दोनों में ही कुछ ना कुछ गलत हो रहा है. um, but anyway, that is something that I it's just a random recommendation that I have. And with that, I think we are at that stage where we have discussed almost everything that we had to discuss. We've already gone over 1 hour. So before ending, I will go to you, Amit. Any specific recommendation? I think you'll recommend that book, but apart from that book, any other recommendations?
No,
This is like a blatant copy from the Hafta podcast,
यार ये
Raj.
तो
Come
वही
on.
तो बनता है, इतना तो
yeah,
बनता है
no,
यार,
I'm
इतना
gonna
तो
start
बनता
reading about this guy called Thomas Sankara, who was called like Africa's Che Guevara. So I would ask people to also learn about him, Thomas Sankara. He was supposedly a very small president of very small country, and then he got assassinated in I think '89. But he kind of took their country to a better place where while he was there, and then he was just because it was a French colony before, and then because of his policies, French influence was not there anymore, so he was assassinated. So yeah, it was a pretty good new thing which I learned today. So I would tell people to learn about him. That's what I would recommend.
That is a good recommendation. मेरे को भी, I mean, I know the name of this guy, but that's definitely something that I should read up on. What about you, Gautam?
So I must confess not that I've not been reading as much or seeing a lot of content
You,
online because of travel. Sorry, go ahead, Raj.
then yeah, I was just about to say that you can recommend documentaries and anything that you think.
Yeah, so I do want to recommend a book though. This year I read The Half Lion. It's about the Half Lion, how P.V. Narasimha Rao transformed India. Uh, as the title suggests, it's not like a glorification of P.V. Narasimha Rao. It kind of gives you a good picture of his life and all of his black and white areas. So it tells you about what good things he did and also how he kind of might have been involved in a lot of corrupt activities as well. So I recommend that book. It's a fairly balanced book. It's by Vinay Sitapati. He's pretty good. And then I also want to recommend this documentary called, I think it's called The Devil Next Door. I think it's about,
Yeah, I've seen
have
it.
you seen that? Okay, I'm in
Black.
the last episode of it, so it's pretty very very interesting. It's about this alleged Nazi guard back in the
Yeah.
day. What is he called? He was the
Darth
evil
Vlad, the evil Vlad the Impaler, I think. No, let me.
Ivan the Terrible, right? Ivan the
Ivan the
Terrible.
Terrible. Yes,
Yeah,
Ivan the
Ivan
Terrible.
the Terrible. So he was there was this guy who they found in the U.S. who was alleged to be this horrific guard who kind of oversaw all of these deaths in the concentration camps, and how they later find out that he might not be the actual guy. So it's a very fascinating documentary, and how people's emotions place with it, how history and context play into it. So it's a very interesting documentary that I've been watching.
Which is a very interesting recommendation because recently I was talking to someone about Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was a similar case where he was found in Argentina and Israel had a whole case against
Yes.
him. He was supposed to be the train driver that took people to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
his response was that I was just following duties. And that is like basically sometimes the biggest evil is done by people who are just following their orders.
Yeah, but with
Yeah,
Um,
and how the Israelis captured Adolf Eichmann is a great story in itself.
yeah, but I
there's a movie on Netflix
yeah.
where Ben Kingsley is playing Adolf Eichmann, I
Yeah,
guess.
there's a Netflix. I think it is on Netflix. I'm not sure, but this Eichmann story, right? It has a very fascinating aspect of it that to punish Eichmann, Israel created new laws which were not there before.
Yeah.
So, which is like a
Yeah.
quandary which anybody can get into. It's a very gray area.
Which is again a very great point because
Yeah.
basically what they said, because the crimes were committed in a land that was not Israel's. And you cannot, how can you try someone for crimes that was not committed in his, like it's like
Not in your
some
jurisdiction.
not is not, so they created this law where which was like the crime against this Jewish people. And so basically now crimes against Jewish people, if you do it anywhere, you can basically try them in Israel, which is a very kind of weird thing that and basically that's like Israeli exceptionalism,
Yeah.
which again
Yeah.
we can talk a whole lot about. My recommendation will be a book called Bridging the Social Gap by Sukhdev Thorat. It's a very good book. In fact, the thing that you were saying, Gautam, about not having enough data for the reservation discussion, I think this book would really give you a lot of ideas and numbers and facts to talk about reservation and how or why or why not it, why is it needed and why it has not been as effective as imagined perhaps.
Okay, we'll check it out.
So with that, I think we will say goodbye. And sorry, this time we gave shout outs to a lot of people except one person that I gave a shout out to every time, that is Amit Uncle. uh, अमित अंकल का एक फोटो which I recently came out yesterday was where he's wearing a Kejriwal style muffler, and basically someone tweeted like with Kejriwal saying हमने कहा था ना हम राजनीति नहीं सब कुछ बदलने आए हैं. It was so
Yeah.
And we are
anyway.
talking about Amit Shah, not Amit on this podcast, right? Just making
अमित का
sure.
नाम खराब कर
Amit
दिया है सच में सीरियसली.
so Amit Shah का actually नाम अमिताभ शाह है, by the way,
Whatever it is.
so you know.
अमिताभ का नाम भी खराब कर दिया तो फिर.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, I will say goodbye. Take care until next
Thank
time.